James chapter 1, and I'm going to begin reading at verse number 22. I'm going to go to verse number 25, and it says, "But be doers of the word, and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man observing his natural face in a mirror. For he observes himself, goes away, and immediately forgets what kind of man he was. But he who looks into the perfect law of liberty and continues in it, and is not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work, this one will be blessed in what he does." I'm going to ask you if you would just turn with me to Genesis chapter 12. This is very familiar. I'm just going to read two verses. 12 verses 1 and 2. We've been here before. And it says, "Now the Lord had said to Abram, get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house, to a land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing." I'm going to be starting a series on today that is going to be highlighted, Mirror, Mirror, with the subtopic, A Skewed View. A skewed view. I have read to you from James, but I find it unique that even as I have labored in prayer with the Lord, as he has instructed me where to go, that God found a way to lure me back to Genesis chapter 12. And oftentimes for many of us, it is hard for us to really be honest with ourselves. It is hard and difficult to be honest with yourself. I found that God initially took me to James chapter 1 because it was in his direction and his instruction to me and with me that he wanted me to look at me, to see me. And he, in doing so, showed me that many of us would use the mirror as an observation deck as opposed to a reflection point. Many of us will look in the mirror to make observations of our current status or our future status, but never looking in the mirror as a reflection point. James did so in the text on today by saying that as men, he said that those of us who are only hearers are like a man who stands in a mirror and immediately walking away from what that man sees in the mirror, forgets not who he is, not who he is to become, but says he forgets who he was. We don't stand in front of a mirror to acknowledge the journey that we've come. We all stand in the mirror to really focus on where we are currently standing. If you're like me, you can't help but one of the first things you do when you wake up in the morning is rise up out of your bed and go into the restroom, and on your way to the restroom, you pass right by your reflection. Before you do anything, before you encounter anyone, you encounter yourself first. Before you can acknowledge anyone else, you have to come to grips with you. And I've discovered that even in my approach to understanding that God has called me to a work that I believe that is greater than anything that I could ever imagine I would put my hands on, God is reminding me of where he brought me from. I will stand in the mirror, and I, like many of you, as beautifully dressed as you are, you had to stand in front of the mirror to make sure that your hair was right in line, and to make sure that you washed the sleep out of your eye, and to make sure that those things that you believe that people would pay attention to would be eliminated. But I know that what I see in the mirror is oftentimes not the real story of who I really am. I dress myself up. I find that if I go a couple of days without shaving, that my view of who I believe I am becomes skewed. I like to be neatly groomed. I like to have myself together, and I believe that my first impression is going to be the me impression. It's what I believe I should be looking like. But we live in a society right now where we're not really focused on what we look like, but it's what someone else says we look like. It's what someone else dictates that we should be looking like. We have mimicked those people around us who have had influence and impact and an effect on who we are now. And I must ask myself, am I truly who God says I am? Or am I a skewed view of who God says I am? We will revisit something that is very important for all of us, because in today's time, and I'm going to do this, I'm not going to talk about any of you, because we're talking about the mirror. We're talking about a skewed view. So if you don't mind, as we go through this series, I'm going to just talk about me. I know that's something that I normally do, but I find that in this season of my life, that when I have come across a problem over the last few months in my life, I have found myself going to God and petitioning God for a circumstance that may be going on around me. But I find that God is always propping me up right in the mirror. No matter who I point my finger at, God is saying, yeah, you're pointing that way, but as you point, that reflection is coming right back to you. You believe that you got it all together. You believe that your plans are fail-proof. You believe that they're fault-proof, but I want you to know that you have a skewed view of yourself. It's in this text that I have come to grips that, God, I am not all that I claim to be. As people will often comment about my attire and the way I dress or the way I look and what my style may be, it is easy to be given to what I believe I am based on what people say I am. I will buy into people saying you are stylish and you look good and you carry yourself well. Look at you. Look at how well you carry yourself. And I will lean back a little bit. I will prop my shoulders back and kind of walk a little bit more confident because of what people say. But it's only when I step in the mirror that God is saying, you forget where you've come from. You forget what I've brought you out of. You forget that this is my plan for your life. And don't get caught up in the fleshly and the temporal things of your life, because you can get sucked into this thing of believing that it's all on what's on the outside. James is saying in his writing, as he is very direct He is saying to all of us who are believers, he is saying it's enough to say that you hear the voice of God. He's saying, yeah, you're talking about you heard what he said. He said, yeah, you can repeat what he has told you, but yet you are not doing what he said. Said you are hearers, but they are definitely not doers. And he's not just talking about doing. Many of us will wrap around our ability to get things done, but he's not talking about being busy. He's talking about doing as he commanded. He's not talking about doing it your way. He's saying, do it my way. And I have found that in my life that as I stand before you, oftentimes I feel inadequate as a pastor. I'm just going to lay this out here for you because we all must look in the mirror and acknowledge that there are some things in us that had it not been for God, we would be roadkill. James, God has me to take a real close look, and I would stand in the mirror and I would say to myself, look at the wrinkles under your eyes. And look at the wrinkles right close to your lips. Look at the spots that are showing up on your skin. Look at how you are changing into someone who's older. But God will say, look at the man that you've become. Look at where you've come from. Those lines dictate the journey that you have walked. And while many will do everything they can to cover them up, will try to take shots in order to look younger and to wipe away the wrinkles in your face, God says, I want you to see the roadmap that is on your face. The journey that you've taken. Others have gotten off track, and I have brought you back to the map that says this is your journey. We will take this journey, and it will be about a 4-week journey of understanding that the person in the mirror is alone. The person in the mirror is not pointing at someone else, but the person in the mirror is taking a hard look at themselves and saying to themselves, I know what everybody else sees, but I know what I'm hiding. I know what I'm hiding. Listen, it's hard in the mirror. The mirror won't lie for you. I had the homework assignment as I was preparing for this message. As the Lord would have me, and some of us don't believe the Lord will tell you this, but the Lord would tell me to go watch this Disney movie. This old Disney movie where we see the title Sleeping Beauty. And the beginning of the movie starts out with an old woman who believes that she is the most beautiful in all the land. But she takes the task of walking up to the mirror and asking the mirror who is the fairest of them all. And the mirror being very candid, saying, not you. She at that moment becomes so engulfed in finding who is more beautiful, more successful, more accomplished than she is. She pursues to go after the one that is more beautiful than she. She forgets about herself and focuses on the one she believes is a threat to her. For all of us, I saw that just that small segment was enough for me to basically go and search myself and ask, who am I competing with? Who am I in battle with? Because I believe that God has called me uniquely so that there can't be anyone around me to compete with me. Who is it that God has said that I am that would cause me to get off track and focus on what someone else may be doing. It's in this where God is saying, I want you to take a close look, Gerald. I want you to look. Because there are some things in you that you are not noticing. There are some things in your life that are just not getting done. You hear me, but you're not doing anything. You're making excuses for the way you are. You're making excuses and exceptions for the things that you continue to do that are not a part of my plan for your life. And you are trying to figure out how you can circumvent the process when I'm telling you to just follow my lead. I led you back to Genesis because it's in that text that God illuminates a purpose and a plan for all of us. Because in this, we've all referred or heard about Abram being called out by God. But we have all kind of misinterpreted, because it is in this text that as God said, I want you to go back and I want you to see something. I went back, and in verse 1 of chapter 12 of Genesis says, now the Lord said to Abram, and it's a colon. He's about to say something that is specific to Abram. He said, get out of your country. Get out of your familiar surroundings. Get away from those that you identify with. Get out of your comfort zone. Get from your family those who influence you the most, who have the greatest impact on you. I want you to get from them. Many of us, when we hear something like this, we in our own natural state would resist this, because the most important people in our lives are our families. Y'all don't have to get quiet, but I'm going to break this for you. Because when God is wanting to deal with us, God is going to cut everybody off, including family. He will make us shed family because of the influence that they have on our decision making. He says, I want you to not just get from your family, but I want you to get out of your father's house. I want to be more detailed. Get out of your father's house. And he says, I want you to go somewhere to a land that I will show you. Now, we initially would have read this text and said that God showed him the land. But when you read the text, he says, get out, then I'll show you. We have read this text and says that God took him out there and showed him where he was going to go, and he went. God didn't show him. He said, you get out, and I'll show you. Which says to me that the initial response that we all must have is to just get out. We all want to wait on what God has in store for us, so we won't move until we see evidence of what God is doing in order for us to believe that it is God. I needed that, because when God called me to pastor, for years, Mother Joanne, I resisted. And anybody who would even speak it to me, it was almost as if it was an insult. That I was like, no, that's not the will of God for my life. That's not the will of God. But I know that I could still hear. There would be still some voicing. There would still be some audible things that I would hear that would say, this is the direction that I'm going to take you in. But I found myself still wrestling with God on him saying, get out. And me saying, no, I'm not, that's not me. That's not the way I want to go. That's not the direction that I believe that God is having for my life. And God is saying, you don't know me. We all believe that God is going to call us to something that is comfortable. But I find that it is completely the opposite when God calls you. Amen. He puts you in a vice and makes you so uncomfortable that you have no other choice but to lean in his direction. He says, this first part, he says, I'll show you. But before I show you, I got to do something. I got to make you. Now, I've said this before, but God took me back here. He said, we all have been shouting and praising God about being blessed because he shows us the end result. And we start shouting and dancing because he shows us the end result. And I've discovered that many of us, if not all of us, have shouted too soon. Because we see the end result and not believe that we have to go through the process. The process of being made. And that process can be long and tedious. It can be cumbersome. It can be complicated. It can also cause you to look at yourself in a completely different way. When God starts to make you, you start to analyze whether or not you are who you believe you are. You start to ask yourself, God, is this truly your plan for my life? Is this truly what you have in store for me? I see Abram, and I can see him from chapter to chapter in his progression. But we know that it took him years to get to the point. I'm 57. And I am just now starting to grapple with the idea that I want to always have it my way. God is saying, until you get out of your way, you can't be in my will. God is saying you can't point at someone else while you're looking in the mirror, because the only one in the mirror is you. And many of us will use a mirror as a window when in fact all it does is show you you. Now, I like how James is he's very candid. He doesn't mince his words. He doesn't fluff it up for you to get comfortable. But he says that what will benefit you is not just hearing what God has said, but doing what he says. And he's not talking about just doing anything, but he's saying doing the will of God. He said, now everybody's doing a lot of talking about how they are sold out to God, but everybody ain't doing sold out. Everybody is speaking sold out, but everybody ain't living sold out. Everybody is talking about sold out, but everybody literally are not sold out. This is a point of reflection for me, because I am looking at how we are in the ministry are evolving, and how God is showing me those little things that you believe won't really wreak havoc in your life. But it's that thing that God says, I need you to go back and fix yourself. My wife and I often get into, a kind of comical debate when we're getting dressed. I know y'all have this where you see yourself wearing something before you put it on. You have already imagined in your head how it's gonna look. You have tossed and turned on it all night because you believe that this is going to be the one outfit, the one dude that is going to set you apart on the next day. You, in your head, have already worked it out. You haven't thought of any other thing except that outfit. You have thought from head to toe how you're going to wear your hair. You have thought about how you're going to wear your shoes. You've thought about it from top to bottom, only to get up and put it on and you stand back in the mirror and you kind of look at yourself and say, that just don't look right. And no matter how you tug on it, no matter how you pull on it, and you walk away from the mirror, hoping that when you come back, the view is different. I've done that. I said, oh, I can't wait to put this on. I have something that I've set aside and I haven't worn it for 6 months. I bought it with this intent. I finally got the puzzle, put it together, and I step up to put it on, and it just don't fit right. It don't look right. The idea in my head just did not come to the reality that I had. And you say, well, maybe it's the color. Maybe it's the way it sits on me. And I find that the more I analyze it, the more frustrated I become. Then I start to take off piece by piece. And I realize that it's not the outfit. It's actually me. Because the way I envisioned it, it doesn't look that way, not because of the outfit, but because of the body. The body is refusing to cooperate by saying, no, that's a little tight right there. Yeah, that button is screaming a little bit right there. Those handles are sticking out way too far. Where God would say the same thing to many of us, where we go to God and say, God, I'm ready for whatever you have for me. And God is saying, that don't look like I planned for it to look on you. You are going to have to lose a little weight. You're going to have to, before you can wear that, you're going to have to lose some weight. Now, y'all, I know I'm not the only one that if it was something that you really wanted to wear, you have, said, okay, let me put that back. Let me cut a few meals, run on the treadmill for a little bit, and come back and see if it works right. Well, God does the same thing with those of us that God places a purpose on your life and you believe that you're all ready for it. God says, nah, I need you to look at yourself. No, it ain't my plan that's messed up. It's not my agenda that's messed up. It's not my purpose. But it's you. You have a skewed view of yourself because in your mind you look a certain way. You conduct yourself a certain way. But the truth is, you are not doing what I said. We're going to uncover what it is about me that hinders the work that God has in front of me. And Minister Albert prayed something this morning that has been my prayer, which is, God, I want to be humble.
Yes, God. Yes, Lord.
I want to be humble.
Yes, Lord.
And being humble is not an easy task, because humble is like literally looking in the mirror and yourself telling you, you are ugly today. When God can look at you and say, no, that's the one thing I just don't like about you. I want you to fix that. I want you to acknowledge that. And there are things about me, y'all, that I have come to grips that I have got to let God change. If you are sitting under the sound of my voice and you're saying, nope, I've done all the changing I'm going to do, I'm not doing no more changing, then you are in trouble. Because the only one that doesn't change is God. He's the only one that doesn't change. The skewed view of me, the skewed view says that I'm perfect and that I got it all together. I'm a little flawed over here, but don't pay attention to that. But God says no. A little leaven destroys the whole lump. And it's that little thing that you don't think that really matters that God is saying pay attention to. Yeah, have you ever, sat in front of someone and they had a little something in the corner of their mouth and you didn't say anything? You saw it, but you said nothing. You could see it, but I'm just going to talk as if I don't see it. God is saying, now, you see that. Don't just look at it. Deal with that. There's some things in me that are real little, but they're magnified. The smallest speck. I'm this one. I'm almost done. I'm this one that my eyes are drawn to the smallest detail. My wife can tell you that my eyes are drawn to the smallest speck in the carpet. I can see it, and I will probably acknowledge it to myself, but I won't say anything until I just get tired of looking at it.
Okay, now. I hear you, Pastor.
I'm that guy. I told you I'm that guy who will walk in a public restroom and nobody's in there. And if it's a speck of a paper towel in the corner, I'm that one that will pick it up because it just bothers me that much.
Right.
I know somebody's saying that's nasty. But
Okay now. Go ahead. It's okay now. Let's go now.
But
That's right.
if it's nasty,
Tell it.
why would I leave it as opposed to picking it up so it's not nasty? Many of us treat our lives the same way because we get offended when somebody points out what's nasty in our lives. And we say, how dare you point this out to me? When in fact, you knew it was there all along. You knew it was there. Didn't nobody have to tell you about your raunchy attitude, but when they came to you and they mentioned it to you, oh, you got traumatized because they said this about me. You already knew it. We act shocked when somebody says, yeah, your attitude is nasty. How dare you? When God has been telling us all along. They're not telling us nothing we don't already know. The Holy Spirit is just like me. He walks into my own life and he sees, I see that little speck that you've been walking past the entire time. I'm going to say this and I'm going to close. I used to, for extra money, I used to work for a brother who had a cleaning service. And he was gracious enough to allow me to make extra money. And he gave me the assignment of cleaning a daycare. And I would have to spend, after working 12 or 13 hours on my job, I would have to spend an extra 2 to 3 hours cleaning this daycare facility. I started off cleaning everything, being meticulous and wiping down everything. But as time would go on, time became of the essence for me. And I wanted to cut corners. I wanted to not do some things that was obvious to the eye. So I would do those things that only the natural eye, I believe, would catch. Little did I know, one of the teachers had placed a small piece of paper in a very conspicuous spot. And I didn't pay much attention to it. I would vacuum around it. Every now and then I would see it, but I'm in a rush. That paper ended up staying there for 3 weeks. That teacher told the owner of the facility that whoever is cleaning the building is not doing a thorough job. That owner of the business contacted the guy who hired me. And he said, well, no, I know him. He's a thorough brother. He does it. I said, no, well, listen, you don't know this, but the teacher put a piece of paper right here. Come here, let me show you this paper. And that very paper was sitting in the very spot that she placed it in 3 weeks prior. And he had to come to me. And he came to me not to try to insult me, but saying, have you been cleaning? I'm like, yeah, I've been cleaning. Yeah, I've been cleaning. Have you been vacuuming? Yeah, I've been vacuuming. He said, well, come here, let me show you something. He took me right into that room and took me right to that corner, and he showed me that piece of paper, and he said, this paper has been here for 3 weeks. And it is a testament to you that you've been cutting corners. And they're not going to pay me what's rightfully mine because you have been cutting corners. That made me feel so small because what I had been doing was affecting someone else's outcome. I'm thinking that my time is more valuable than doing the work that was given to me to do. And it was at this moment that he said, they're asking if you would please pay more attention to small detail. I came away from that not missing anything again. I would move everything and end up being there more than 3 hours trying to make sure that I would never get that type of report again. I'm saying all that to say, what's in your life that you know is there, but you refuse to move? You refuse to clean it up. You ask yourself, looking at yourself, what is it that God is saying to do and not just hear?